So the Sony FX6, a camera that I was super lucky to basically be like the first person in the UK to actually get my hands on this camera. Originally, Sony asked me to go and shoot a short film, basically to promote its release. So Sony, thank you very much for that lovely little gesture right there. And I've had this camera for almost a whole year now, and I've used it in loads of different scenarios, and I feel like I kind of understand it to the point where I can, you know, chat to you lot and say, yeah, this is what I think this camera's banging for, and this is what I think this camera probably isn't so good for. So, let's talk about the Sony FX6. Bosh. Going on, Hugh lot? I hope you're all sweet. So just to let you know, there is a fly in here. I've had the window open, so if you do see me like throwing a jab, cheeky hook, obviously first things first, duck, because you don't want to get sparked. But I'm not just throwing my arms all over the place. I'm trying to catch a fly, basically. And this video is sponsored by the good people over at Artlist, who have got an incredible little competition going on. $75,000 worth of filmmaking goodies to be won. So hang about, I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later. I recommend going and checking that out. But let's get straight back to the Sony FX6. Now, this camera is absolutely incredible. I honestly can't think of not having this camera in my arsenal of cameras nowadays. It takes care of every single YouTube video that I'm not physically holding it in, because obviously can't shoot and hold it at the same time. And it pretty much shoots every single interview that I do, any events that I'm shooting. This is the camera I'm going to. I feel like this is the most reliable, the most confidence building camera that I could possibly ask for. I know if a client comes to me and they say, James, we've got a very, very important interview to do with someone quite big, which has happened really recently, literally last week, I know this is the camera to go to, because I just know that it's going to absolutely pull it out the bag. The battery life's great, the autofocus is banging, and the most important thing, mate, that variable electronic ND. I can't tell you how much that ND has absolutely saved my ass when I'm doing like an exterior interview. We've obviously got changing weather, the clouds are coming in, the sun's coming out, and then all I have to do is give it a cheeky little flick of the old variable ND, and I can just look at my exposure and I can just pull them highlights down, increase the exposure if I need to, and keep the exact same look on my camera with obviously the aperture, keeping the ISO the same, and there's no jumps. That transitional exposure change is absolutely stunning. And obviously we've got the Auto ND, which I think is probably the most innovative thing that we've seen on a camera in, I don't know, maybe like the last 5 years. It really is, in my opinion, the best thing about this particular camera. So most of the scenarios I like to use this camera is when I'm either shooting an event where I'm going to shoot for a very long period of time. I usually like to set up this camera, say for example I'm shooting, I don't know, like a music gig or something like that. This will be the camera that is stuck at the back. It's obviously got them big tally lights on it, so no matter where I am, I know it's rolling, because obviously I can see the tally lights, and I know that that battery life is going to last forever. I literally just done a shoot up in Scotland, and I used one of these big BPU batteries, and I literally shot for 2 whole days. There she is. I literally shot for 2 whole days, yeah? And I didn't even run out of battery. I think I had like 4% left on my final shot. Obviously, I was turning the camera on and off when I needed a shot. Honestly, the battery life on this is great. And if I really want that extra bit of security, say I'm doing like a really important interview, I will always end up just chucking that power port straight in there so I can go straight into the mains, so that I know absolutely nothing is gonna turn off this camera while I'm shooting. So that for me as a professional is very, very important, especially if I'm shooting with really, really high-end clients and I'm interviewing really big people. So yeah, absolute winner, winner, chicken. You know the rest. Ergonomics. Now, personally, I've never shot with a camera that I like the feel of this much. It really, really is incredible to shoot in, no matter what angle you're shooting on. Side grip is beautiful, top handle is great. You've obviously got every function on the top, and that is so handy for when you're shooting things like events. You've got all of these different buttons here. Obviously, if you're going handheld, you've got everything you need here. The good thing about this camera is you don't really need to touch many of the buttons that are on here anyway. A lot of the times if I'm shooting like a documentary or I'm roaming, I will literally set my settings and I'll just put on the auto ND. But if I'm going to be doing an interview, I personally want to have control over that exposure, so I will just do it myself. And talking of interviews, let's talk a little bit about the XLR ports. It's absolutely brilliant to have full-size XLR ports. As I mentioned in my original review, I would have loved like just one XLR port on the body because I basically am Jackie Chan. Oh, I got it as well. Come on. It would have been absolutely beautiful if we just had one XLR port on here, because then we could just go straight into the camera without actually needing the top handle. You need to have the top handle on. That is a bit annoying. However, for me, I never chuck this camera on a gimbal really. It can go on the Crane 2S, the Crane 3S, and it obviously goes on like the Ronins and whatever. So it does fit on gimbals, but for me, personally, I've also got the A7S, so I would rather use the A7S on a gimbal rather than using this on a gimbal. But for pretty much every other use other than vlogging, obviously, this is the camera I'm going to go to. But obviously having that full-size XLR input on the side is absolutely stunning, along with these hard audio levels. I don't particularly like having digital audio levels. I like to be able to bring them down smoothly, like here pretty much. And the audio options inside this camera for me and what I use it for are absolutely perfect. Right, before I go any further talking about this absolute weapon, do you or anyone else that you know who's a filmmaker want to potentially earn 75,000 bags of sand means $1,000 where I'm from, in filmmaking gear? So my good mates over at Artlist are putting on a challenge where you can create a movie trailer, a music video, or a commercial ad. All you have to do is pick an Artlist track and use the sound effects on the platform combined with the supplied footage. But don't worry, you don't need a subscription. You can literally just go over there, get yourself a free trial, and you're good to go. Right, have a go on this, mate. These are the prizes. They've got Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. We've got a full set of the full studio setup from Nanlite. They've got a ton of Xeon gimbals. They've got BenQ bloody editing monitors, which I've got and all, by the way. They've got Rode mics, Insta360s, we've got Rhino sliders, LumeCube lights, MZ Pro subscriptions, DaVinci Resolve Maxon subscriptions, and a ton more, mate. And obviously a full subscription to Artlist and the other platforms that they own. So all you've got to do, number one, download their Edit Challenge Kit. Number two, pick your category. Obviously, we've got the music videos. Wait, come on, fucking. Music videos, commercial ads, and movie trailers. Then go away and make your edit with the Artlist soundtrack and the sound effects combined with the footage. Then go and upload your footage to YouTube using the correct hashtags. I'll leave everything in the description that you can go and just check out everything you need to know. The competition ends on the 23rd of September, the day after your boy's birthday. So send the clips in on my birthday and wish me an happy birthday the day before you actually finish the competition, yeah? Because who don't want to send me an happy, but I might send myself one. All the links are in the description, so go and check it out, mate. Anyway, back to the FX6. Something I love about cinema cameras, which obviously led into the FX6, was that 180-degree shutter angle. Now, it's really annoying that it isn't in a lot of mirrorless cameras, simply because, why are there so many flies in here? Something's up, mate. Something's not right. A swarm have come in here. What are they doing? So the 180-degree shutter angle is absolutely banging. I don't know why it's not in mirrorless and smaller cameras. It's such an easy little software to do. But essentially, if you don't know what it is, any time that you set your frame rate at, let's say, 24, 25, 50, 120, the camera is automatically going to set the shutter angle or the shutter speed at double the frame rate so that you get that nice amount of motion blur no matter what your frame rate is. It really is annoying having to change the shutter speed every time that you change your frame rate, because sometimes I've been there, changed my frame rate, forgot to change my shutter speed. But most cameras nowadays, you can just have, you know, like a cheeky little custom button and it will change it automatically. Now, the next point I'm going to make really isn't that relevant, but it's the actual physical look of this camera. Now, I get so many compliments from other filmmakers and whatever when they finally see like the FX6 in person. They're like, fucking hell, that is so nice. And in my opinion, physically, it's absolutely stunning. And in my opinion, one of the nicest looking cameras, I'd say it's up there with the Komodo. That really isn't very important at all. It's about the image that we're capturing and how you use the camera. But one area that I do find it's quite important, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't a legit thing, is when you're on set with certain clients, certain people, you do want to seem like they're getting their money's worth, right? So when you turn up with an actual cinema camera, I do feel like the client trusts you a lot more, they relax a lot more. Now, listen, I know this is probably going to annoy a lot of people, and to be fair, it annoys me as well. And it's not about the gear that you've got, but when you do turn up on certain sets, if you've got gear that looks a bit inadequate, you do just get a certain vibe, and I hate that. It really does my nutting, but it is just the case. Back in the day when I used to shoot on my little 550D, I used to turn up to some really big places because for some reason people used to hire me. People like my work, right, but they never see me in person. When I turn up, they're like, "That's what you shoot on?" I was like, "Yeah, this is what I shoot on." So yeah, it is quite important that with certain clients that you do look professional. And the FX6 certainly does that from my standpoint. Obviously, I'm not shooting like broadcast or anything, so I don't need an absolute bazooka of a camera like a lot of people in broadcast do. My clients appreciate it, and it is just unfortunately a part of the game. Especially with what I'm doing. So the FX6 looks the part. As I say, that's probably going to trigger a million people, but unfortunately, it is just the case. And usually the people that do kind of look you up and down and look at your gear are absolute knobheads. Now, the autofocus. The autofocus on this camera is absolutely banging. Don't get me wrong, it's basically the exact same as the Sony a7S III and the FX3, but we've got the face only in this camera, and at that, to a lot of people that might not seem that interesting, but if you're shooting something like a documentary where you really just want to keep that nice shallow depth of field to give it a high-end look, you can literally rely on that autofocus. You're tracking someone, all of a sudden their head goes out of the frame, and then you don't just absolutely shoot to the background and now you're focused on the background and then it racks back to the person when they come back in. It's such a nice cinematic, effortless look. If you want to go and check out some examples of that, go and check out my review. I've done a cheeky little test in there which will show you how it works. So what else have I actively noticed about this camera that I love? I think that might be it on the pros. Yeah, I think that's it for the pros. Let's talk about the cons. Now, in terms of the cons, the very obvious one, it's a bit big. It's not huge. A lot of cinema cameras are a lot damn bigger, but I do notice when I have to pack this thing down, when I'm traveling, man, I really don't have a lot of space for anything else when I end up packing this away in my bag. You've obviously got to take off the top handle, then you have to take off the monitor. The monitor is then unprotected, which is something that does my head in a little bit. I wish I had a protector for it. I do actually just stick like a little bag over it. It's basically like a sock, goes over the top, a bit like a Johnny. Goes over the top, it's protected in my bag because I really don't want to end up scratching that screen. And then obviously you have to take off the side handle and then plug it in and then plug in the monitor. So it does get a bit fiddly when you're setting it up and when you're traveling with it, but once it's set up, man, it's the nuts. Other than the size, I really don't have many cons to say about this camera. I know a lot of people are going to expect me to say, oh, but it hasn't got IBIS. Now, I'm going to say something that I've said a lot, but I think for me, IBIS really doesn't matter. Don't get me wrong, if I was primarily a wedding videographer, IBIS would be so important because obviously weddings are meant to be floaty and all of that like cheesy stuff. They're meant to be nice, not like rough and jaggedy. But if I wanted IBIS, I would just chuck this on a gimbal or I'd use my A7S. And I know a lot of people can't have the luxury that I've got, but I'm a pro. Like, this is what I do for a living. I'm not a pro as in, oh, I'm good. I'm saying that I'm a professional. This is what I do for a living. It's like a geezer. Someone who bloody tiles a roof, they're going to have a van full of stuff that they use. That's their investment. These are my tools. So for me, I need this camera, I need my A7S, and I've got my Blackmagic as well. So I need these tools to actually do my job. But I know a lot of people can't get both of them. So at the end of this video, I'm going to try and give you my opinion on if you can only buy one, which one to get. So yeah, for me, IBIS really isn't an issue. I like that handheld shaky look. Over the years of like shooting more, I prefer a shaky look. If I don't want it shaky, it's going on a gimbal or it's going on sticks. And obviously the fact that we've got mad rolling shutter on here, the rolling shutter is so damn good. You really ain't gonna see any issues with that. So yeah, and obviously we've got that gyro data in there as well, which I haven't actually used that much, but it's very impressive. So they are the only real cons that I've actually found with this particular camera. I didn't want to compare this camera to the A7S, the FX3. They're all completely different cameras and they do different things, even though they've got a very, very similar image. Now, if I was someone who only had one option to buy one camera, the FX6, Blackmagic, A7S, the FX3, for example, among other cameras. But I think a lot of people are comparing this to the A7S III and the FX3, kind of going, oh, which one do I get out of the three? And I'm not going to lie, it is not an easy option. But honestly, I'm going to say, in terms of the money, probably the FX3. It'd be a way up between the two because they have the exact same image that comes out of here. Don't get me wrong, the colours are a little bit nicer in this camera. They're absolutely stunning. But for the amount of money that this costs, I would probably prefer, if I was in someone's position who only had the option of getting one, I'd probably get the FX3. That top handle with the XLR inputs combined with the tally lights, for me, I think probably just push it over the edge over the A7S Mark III. But for me, who is in the fortunate position to have more than one, this camera is absolutely perfect for what I need. I could not possibly not have this camera now. The amount of confidence that this camera gives me, especially when I'm going onto a client shoot, I just know I can turn up and this thing is going to perform. And the only thing that really can go wrong, touch wood, is myself. The only limiting factor is me. Am I going to do something wrong? Because I know the camera isn't going to do something wrong. The battery life, I've got the G-Tough cards, which absolutely are sick. And everything about this camera is just brilliant from my perspective. But if you've only got the option of getting one, I'd probably go with the FX3. But I thought it'd be beneficial to you lot to hear my thoughts on owning it for almost a year now. And I really do recommend this camera. It's absolutely sick. But you do you, mate. You do what you've got to do. Everyone does different things. I actually made a video talking about what camera you should get in terms of like the kind of shoots that you do. So go and check that out. But anyway, people, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a cheeky like and a subscribe and that, because it apparently really helps. I never ask anyone to do that, but I just did. So hopefully this video might do a bit better because I said that. Who knows? We'll have to find out, people. And I'll be catching you lot in the next one, mate. Gosh.